I had planned today to record a completely different episode. And this thought and desire to share just kept coming up. And so I'm like, what better place than for all the people that tune in and listen and trust me to guide them in some way, shape, or form than to share about the last few weeks and what I've experienced, and most importantly, what I've learned. One thing about me that if you don't know this by now, I teach and I lead from a place of experience, meaning that before I advise, I will endure. I will experience. I will experiment. And so 9 times out of 10, because there's always circumstances outside of this, when I'm advising on things, there are things that I have personal experience with. And this is a gift and a curse because I feel so committed and devoted to not just spewing things that I think sound good, that it then kind of can prolong my timeline because I'm like, before I advise on this, let me go try it. And so, for better or for worse, that is how I advise and how I teach. And my gratitude most days comes from the lessons that I'm able to learn from experiencing new and different things, even if those things are hard. So today, I want to share with you what has happened over the last few weeks and what I've learned and how I think this applies to you in a helpful way. So let's back things up a few weeks and go to the end of September. The last week of September, Eric and I had a plan to fly to London. So one of the things that I do is whenever I get the school calendar for the following school year, I will go through my calendar and I will mark off days that my kids, or weeks usually, that my kids are out of school, obviously not including the summer. And just really make sure that I have those things clear on my calendar so I know what my capacity is, and so I'm not trying to do too much. I also will book ahead for family vacations and then parent vacations. Something that Eric and I have committed to for our marriage is doing a weekly check-in, which I've talked about before, every week, but then also doing times where longer periods where we are away for 3 or 4 nights. And so end of September, we were scheduled to go to London, and a few days before we were scheduled to fly out, we learned about a hurricane coming towards us. So if you didn't know this already, I live in Florida and I live about an hour south of Tampa. So I am on the west coast of the East Coast. And the area that we actually live in is about 18 miles inland from the coast. So generally, when hurricanes come, our neighborhood is actually very safe as you can be. We live in a newer build home. It's concrete block. We have hurricane shutters, all of those things. So we learned that this hurricane was coming, and that this hurricane, the track of the hurricane would not be hitting us. We found that it was, we went back and forth on, are we going? Are we not going? They ended up closing the Tampa airport. And so we had grandma and grandpa coming to stay with the kids. And so even with some guilt, we made the choice to still go to London. So we're in London, and it's very weird to be on a vacation while you're watching, luckily, again, not in our area, but a lot of devastation very close to where we live. And so while I knew my family was safe, I also was experiencing such opposing emotions where I felt guilty, obviously, for not being there, even though, again, they were safe. I felt guilty about all the people who were experiencing devastation, and I'm in London, exploring and having a really nice time, or attempting to. So I was already kind of holding those emotions while we were there. And then on our last day there, I found out that from the hurricane, there's something that's called a storm surge. And basically the storm surge, the best way that I can describe it is it's like a tidal wave. It's a huge amount of water that comes onto land and destroys things. And it typically happens to the south side of the storm. So while the storm did not hit directly where we are, the storm surge actually hit our barrier islands, which are Anna Maria Island, Siesta Key, we have Longboat Key, Lido Key, things like that, St. Armand Circle, all of those areas. There was a lot of flooding. So that storm surge, and where that storm surge came, and one of the areas that was most impacted was Anna Maria Island. So on September 28th, I found out that Anna Maria Island was basically, so many homes had been destroyed. And with that, I was scheduled to have my private client retreat, the Founders Circle retreat, and have 8 women coming from all over the country to fly into Anna Maria Island on October 6th. So I ended up being pretty stressed on the last day of our vacation. And I like to, in moments where I feel stressed or overwhelmed, I let myself feel that. And then I ask myself, what is in my control here? What can I do? So I started to work through some options. I'm talking to Eric about this, and I was like, okay, I think the best thing for me to do is relocate it and move it. I was in between 2 places, which Fort Myers, which is south of us, and then Orlando, which is even further inland in the middle of the state. So long story short, I spent the 10-hour flight home from London, relocating, replanning, repurchasing, finding vendors, just redoing the entire retreat that was scheduled to happen a week from that day. I learned that, like many of us have experienced, when we want something really badly, we are able to make anything happen. And I surprised myself, and luckily had some help from some friends and my team to kind of pull some details together, but basically replanned the entire retreat, and everything was done in about 3 days. At the same time, I felt guilty for even being stressed and anxious about my retreat because of the devastation, like people lost their homes. And so it was just a really heightened emotional state for a long period of time, because it extends after that I hadn't been in a long time. And it feels a little weird to be in a place that you actively teach people not to be in, honestly. And that's why it's hard for me to share, not because I'm afraid of being vulnerable, but just because there's so many different pieces and parts of this. So I have the anxiety and the stress of rebuilding the retreat and hopefully making the right choice. And I'm grieving the vision that I had for the previous retreat. And I'm, afraid that it won't be good enough. And then I'm also immersed in the reality of our barrier islands and what they look like. So we get home, and, I'm wrapping up things. This is the first week of October. I'm wrapping up details. We relocated it to Orlando, so we're inland, and all of a sudden we hear that there's another storm, another hurricane coming. And I was like, okay, so what does this look like? The hard thing about hurricanes, if you're not familiar with hurricanes or you don't live in Florida, the hard thing about any sort of storm really is that even for the predictability of all the technology, they're still very unpredictable. I mean, they can turn and go a completely different direction hours before. And so, I'm in this place of like, okay, we're Orlando, we get the tracks for the storm. We're like, okay, Orlando is a place that's going to be safe. Even if this storm comes and what the timeline is, we will be safe there. So with the relocation, the retreat started on Sunday. We got back on the Sunday before. So Monday, Tuesday, I wrapped up details. I was coaching clients, proceeding through my week, and then we find out about this other storm. I'm kind of weighing my options there. I'm like, okay, the track it's uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. And I was scheduled to check into the retreat house on Saturday because all the clients are coming on Sunday. So I drive up to Orlando. I'm like, all right. My friend Mindy meets me up there. She helps me with all the setup of the house, the gifts, the groceries, all the prep work that needs to be done on Saturday. And clients fly in on Sunday. And there's just this kind of like, everybody's aware of the storm. I'm like reassuring people and, I'm looking at all the updates and, everybody's just talking, coming together. We're kind of proceeding, also knowing that like there is a storm coming. We need to pay attention to it. And so this is Sunday, everybody flies in. We have a great night, Sunday night. Everybody's connecting, we're really in this space together. And then Monday, same thing. So we have, our schedule of events and I'm kind of talking through them. All right, we might have to shift some things around. And, we're watching the timing of the storm. And we're going through the activities and I just get this feeling and I'm watching these updates and I'm like, this is just not okay. So the storm proceeds to get stronger. It's looking like it's going to be a direct hit for where I live. So that combined with the reality of then, we started to hear about some airport closures and things like that. So I was up in my room on Monday night and we're getting ready. There's a private chef there. We've spent the day, planning and masterminding and connecting. And I just break down in tears. And looking back on that moment, I think it was the reality of this isn't going to work. It's the reality of me wanting something so badly and it just not happening. And I've experienced this before and we've all experienced it. And at the end of the day, it always ends up working for us. And it was funny because some of my clients even said that because they were using my words towards me. Because I often say to my clients, like, this is happening for you. And what is this showing you? And so I broke down and I knew that I needed to go home and be with my family. I knew that I couldn't coach at my highest capacity. I knew that there was an underlying level of like anxiety and stress that was there there's just a hurricane coming and none of these people are from Florida. There was one person from Florida and like she was chill. But it's like if you've never experienced it before, that can be really scary. And so I made the decision to go downstairs and tell everybody they needed to rebook their flights and go home the next day. And I lost it. I was bawling in front of everybody. I felt like I failed. I felt like I was letting my family down. I felt like I was letting my clients down. I was holding so tightly to, rebuilding this vision and all of the energy and time and money that went into this. And I just was so sad, honestly. And so I let myself experience that and feel that. And before I came downstairs, I was like, how can I make this feel okay? Because what most people don't realize about being a mother and a business owner is that the responsibility that you hold both to your commitment to both your children your marriage, your family, and your business is that there are times where you do have to choose one. And in this moment, I needed to choose my family. I needed to be home with my family, even knowing, again, which no spoilers, but our house was completely safe. We never even lost power. It was like almost best case scenario for our house, not the case for our surrounding areas. But I still couldn't live with not being there. And so I learned in this moment of surrender that this vision was lost and that this plan wasn't going to work. But as an entrepreneur, I always have the opportunity to create a new plan. And so these women have committed, they paid for a service, and I was going to give them that. And what I didn't want to do was make this retreat any part of that service. So I decided to take the loss. And we actually ended up planning our next retreat together. And we made it really fun. Everybody, when I lost my mind and broke down crying in front of everybody met me with like such understanding and grace. And I think some people were relieved because some people were worried, right? Especially because, we, in the space we were in, we would have been okay as well. But they probably wouldn't have been able to go home on Thursday because of the airport closures. So it was the best and right decision. It was also a really hard decision. And that was another lesson that I took away from this, was it was such a good reminder of what I often say about making the best decision for the long term usually is going to be your hardest decision. I could have dug my feet in and my hands in even more and held so tightly to where I then would have had to live with the guilt of, truly not being an example of what I teach, which is putting your family first. And I was thankful that clients reflected that back to me as like, you are right here in front of us doing what you teach, which I hadn't thought of in the moment, of course, but I just knew that it was the right thing. And so everybody, booked flights home and flew home on Tuesday, and I came home to my family, and the storm ended up coming on Wednesday night, like through the night, and we are okay. And at the retreat on Monday night, we played the fun little game. I don't know if you've seen this on Instagram or not, but they put all these vacation spots in a bowl, in whichever one you choose, where you're like, we're not going to this place. I actually filmed it, so I want to post that eventually. But so we picked dates and a location, and I was like, I want the opportunity to give you guys the retreat that I know that I can give you. And it was great because all of them were like, I can't believe we've only been here for like a full day. Like, I've gotten so much out of this. Like, and it was good to get that feedback because I was being so hard on myself. But we got to end in such a beautiful place that I'm really grateful for. And it will be so cool to have all the same women back and, get the opportunity to do it again. And so that was the craziness of about 3 weeks of my life. As I am recording this right now, my children just went back to school after 11 days. And it's been not an easy time. And I think that it's easy to forget who we are when things get hard. It's easy to lose sight of what we value most and start to make those short-term, instant gratification, reactive based decisions. And I got an opportunity in these last few weeks to showcase and be an example of what I teach in making the harder decisions, in making proactive decisions, in pivoting when things aren't working. And I'm grateful that I got to flex those muscles and utilize those skills And I'm grateful that those skills are things that are available to me and to all of us. And so I really felt like this was important to share for a few reasons. The first reason being, first and foremost, like, I'm a human and I have hard times too. And this is what it looks like behind the scenes of holding commitments to clients and holding commitments to your family. And this is what I personally went through. And what I learned was so much about myself and so much about when I am put under an immense amount of pressure, who I can be and how I navigate that pressure. I'm grateful for the tests. I'm grateful for the challenge. And I'm grateful, obviously, that we are in a position where we are safe from these storms and that my clients got home safely and that I get an opportunity to lead the type of retreat that I am known for leading. And so if you are in a season or a position or a week or a day where things get hard, my encouragement for you today and what I want you to take away from this is that you always have the freedom of choice in how you respond. And don't ever cling so tightly to something that you lose sight of the bigger vision. My bigger vision with retreats is always to create a life-changing transformation. And this environment, because of a natural disaster that was out of my control, was not conducive to that. And I had to let that go. I had to lose so that I could stay aligned with what is most important. And so don't hold so tightly to things because you're afraid of losing something that you miss out on what is actually possible. We always have the chance to change how we respond. There were so many moments where I wanted to sit in the place of sadness and grief and heaviness, especially with how devastating Helene was for so many different states and areas. And to learn how to feel those things and not suppress those emotions and process those emotions while also not letting them take away from who I needed to be and what I needed to do was a challenge. But it's something that we all have access to. You can be sad, you can be grieving, you can be upset about a vision or a thing that was lost or that didn't work. And at the same time, you can feel grateful for what has worked or grateful for the lessons or happy about something that is working well. And so we don't want to lose sight of those things, even when we're in the shit, even when we're having a hard time. So I hope that if you are in a hard season right now, you remember that there's always opportunity and there's always choice, even when it feels like shit keeps getting thrown at you. And I hope that if you're not in a hard season right now, that you remember when hard seasons come and when hard times come, that you don't have to abandon who you are and what's most important. In fact, you need to lean into those things. I hope that me sharing this today helps you. I hope that you've walked away with something, a reminder of the opportunity, of the privilege, truly, of entrepreneurship. And I hope it's given you some insight into the reality of being a mom and a business owner and how we navigate both. And it's not always perfect. And sometimes it's messy. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. As always, send me a message on Instagram. If you are looking for a partner in your business, my private partnership is on a wait list until next year, but you can absolutely apply and reserve your spot on the wait list. I also have my mastermind open. This is a beautiful place where I'm only allowing one woman from each industry, so it can be a great opportunity for networking and to build some referral partnerships. And inside this mastermind, we are really organizing your business to make sure that it is built family first. Make sure that you are able to continue growing your business and not be at the expense of yourself or your sanity. And really pushing you to operate in new ways. So looking at your leadership and the way that you're running the business itself, and looking at everything that's in the back end as well to make sure that you are set up with the correct structure and business model so that you can sustain and be successful long term. So this is an intimate mastermind, and it includes a retreat, which is actually going to be in April. So if you have any questions about this, if you are a business owner and a mom and you want to continue growing your business, you're ready for next steps of where you want to go and you need the pieces to put it all together, and you don't want to do it at the expense of more family time, then let's have a conversation, and no pressure. You can book a call with me in the show notes, and I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for listening and being a place where I can share.